Hey y'all, I am Daniel Aaron, world expert on vibrant, thriving life, and I am delighted to be here today with Chris Coomer, who is
Right.
a great friend. He is, in my humble and experienced opinion, the most effective teacher of anatomy, specifically for yoga teachers in the world, in part because he's got such an incredible knowledge of it and experience as a yogi, and in part because he's such an effective and dedicated learner, has so much energy. The way he brings the information across is in a way that not only can we utilize it, it's fun and it's interesting, which is the hallmark of great teaching and great learning. So, and I've invited Chris specifically for this conversation, largely for my own self-interest, because I love breathing and it's such a powerful tool in my own life. I want to understand it and utilize it better. So, Chris, thank you for being with us today.
Welcome, and thank you for having me on your little exchange. I'm really excited to share that with everyone, and also to continue our dialogue that we've been having. And I brought a friend along to help us out if we need to.
That's awesome. Excellent. And for y'all tuning in, watching us right now, this is a modern world video interview where Chris is, well, where are you, Chris?
I'm in Toronto in Canada right now.
Awesome. Cool. And he has set up his sort of home studio anatomy show laboratory. And as y'all can see, I am in my home studio office slash car office this morning. And it's such an amazing, modern, fascinating world that we can have this level of educational dialogue from anywhere in the world.
Yeah, internet is very good if we don't get distracted by it too much.
Yeah, and Chris, would you start us out with what you said a moment ago about here we are both on the East Coast. You're in Canada, I'm in the US, and it's a dreary gray day out today, which I recorded something for the people on who are doing my 21-day breath ride. I recorded something for them earlier this morning, and I thought the exact same thing, like, what a perfect day for talking about the value of breath. And you said something a moment ago. Would you say that again for us?
Sure. It was the prompt of the dreary gray day where I thought like, ooh, this is a time when people complain about respiratory stuff not going well, feeling constricted, feeling a little bit like maybe phlegmy, mucousy, chesty, and whatever else comes up. And we all rely on like external things like, oh, I need to keep warm, so we need to turn up the heat, or we need to wear the right clothes, or we need to take this medicine, or do this what somebody else gives us, when the actual tool to, let's say, manage, improve, and keep our body healthy is within ourselves, mediated through the breath itself. That by paying attention to that which we have and cultivating that, we might get a whole lot further than through external means.
I'm totally with you. That's awesome. All right. Well, I guess my biggest question to you is, well, how does it work and why is it so important? And I think you're implying that I could rely less on medicine and beauty treatments in order to have a vibrant glow about my life, and I could perhaps use breath. Is that what you're saying?
It's a secret. So yes, we can hugely influence how we feel by the way that we breathe. So what I want to do for anyone listening, the first thing is I'd like you to first feel your pulse. So if you grab or take hold of your opposite wrist, so one hand to the other wrist, and you might feel there's a pulse in there. If you can't feel it there, you also will be able to feel a pulse on your neck. Or you can, if that's also difficult, somewhere listening, there might be a heartbeat in you there. Once you feel the heartbeat or that pulse in your wrist or your neck, I'd like you to observe what happens to your pulse or to your heartbeat when you breathe in, and keep observing when you breathe out. Can you notice a difference there? So for most people, it's noticeable that, and I'm giving this away now, but assuming you're feeling the same, that when you breathe in, your heart rate slightly speeds up. And when you breathe out, your heart rate slightly slows down. So this is one big correlation of in-breath, out-breath having an internal organ and possibly systemic effect here. That's the basis of a lot of these regulations for the body. When we go further, we have to look at where we breathe, how we breathe, and what it means in the body. When we breathe, like look at our friend here, obviously most of us breathe somewhere through, he's dislocating his jaw in the process. We breathe somewhere either through the nose or through the mouth to get air into the lungs. So it'll be what we call like respiratory system, that part where we get the air from the outside, from our environment, into the body itself. Then once we have the air in the lungs, that oxygen, which is so vital for us on that level for now, goes into, from the lungs, it's exchanged and binds to parts in your blood, our blood, and gets circulated throughout the body. Then, this is the important part where we really speak about the difference between healthy breathing and healthy effects, because we want to have the effects, not just the right breath. How do we get this oxygen into the body? Because at the moment it's in the blood. How do I get it into my cells? How do I get it to my organs? And we need to work on that. Part one would be where to breathe. Part two would be what happens in the lungs and where to breathe in this part of the body. So where are we directing the breath? And part three is then where does it go from the blood to the organs? So far, you with me?
Yes, sir.
Now, breathing through the nose has a few advantages. Breathing through the nose gives us that ability to clearly, even though I have a big nose, the nostrils are clearly smaller than if I was to open my mouth. A lot more air would go in there. So breathing through the nose would allow us to slow down, to control the flow of air a little bit better. Breathing through the nose also allows the mucous membranes on the inside to warm up the air. The mucous membranes will also filter the air to trap kind of dust particles, pollens, which are very popular to float around in springtime. Yeah? So all that gets trapped there a little bit and then can come out with the mucus. What happens as well is that our sense of smell is in the nose as well, which we don't really have as much when we breathe through the mouth. We would be a bit foolish to say, okay, sense of smell is only for smell. It's a part of your brain, literally sticking down into the roof of your nose up in here. If that was only for smell, like it smells good, I don't like this smell, you say, okay, like what's the big deal? The other part, I mean, there's many other things that are being looked at there, but the really important part is to reanalyze the flow of air, the composition of the air, and many of such things. So the flow of air, that speed of the flow, and the balance of how much is going in, how long it's flowing in, and how much it's flowing back out, that also gets registered. So it's basically the brain registering like how much is going this way, how much is going this way. If a lot goes this way, this way, this way, this way, then obviously we have an imbalance. So your nervous system, your brain is also registering the flow, and with that, you have an impact with your breath on the state of your nervous system. So already you see, by talking about the breath, we're actually talking about your nervous system. And with that, everyone says, oh yeah, my nervous system, I'm so stressed, which by virtue of living in a big city like I am here, everyone does. Everyone is really stressed out about one thing or another. What few people realize is that your breath And the simple shift of how you breathe in and how you breathe out, how you, let's say, hold a certain balance there, that will actually influence already and set up your nervous system to be more like, I'm more stressed, I'm more stressed, I'm more stressed, I'm more stressed, or like, I'm okay, I can deal with it, bring it on, I can do it. That is just the ratio of your in-breath and your out-breath. And with that, we have already a great tool to get all kinds of other cool effects if we take it to certain extremes. There's a number of popular breathing techniques in the moment that make use of that to explore our nervous system and so on. Yeah. One interesting part about nose breathing versus mouth breathing is the filtering aspect. There was a study, just on that one part, there was a study in Australia where they looked at very high rates of childhood asthma by getting children to teach them, or teaching children to breathe through the mouth, cut asthma rates by about 90%. So that filtering, along with other chemical products that are made in your sinuses that help to breathe and relax the airways more, made a significant effect. And more studies have shown since was it 1995, since that was discovered, that this has a main impact on the way we can actually open our respiratory airways, even in situations of stress. You had your finger up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. That's awesome. That's amazing what you just said, and it makes it really graphic and clear, that relationship between breath coming in and breath going out, and what you said about stress. You know, personally, I never get stressed myself.
Of course. It's a good joke.
No, and joking aside, of course, you know, we all get stressed, and there are great things about stress, of course, too. There's helpful aspects. And you mentioned that the ratio is a huge component of how we might utilize or deal with stress. Would you say another word about, for those of us who might get stressed out at times, what specifically we should or shouldn't do with the ratio to help with that?
Yeah, I actually like to go in two ways about this. One is the actual ratio of in-breath and out-breath. The other part is which brings us then from here more into this area of the body, more torso area. The first part on the ratio is what we just observed with our pulse already, with our heartbeat, wherever you were measuring that, feeling it. If you extend one part or the other in duration, then that is the part of your nervous system you emphasize. So if you want to come back to that, just to feel it, be on your neck or on your wrist, and you take a reasonably quick in-breath, and then a long, slow exhalation. Not only might you be able to observe that your pulse, your heart rate slows down as you have a long, slow exhalation, but you might also find that if you do this for a few breaths, that you do feel like things are settled a little bit. Yeah, so that relaxation comes in by emphasizing that relaxation part of your breath, or the relaxation component of your breath. If you, on the other hand, have like a and like a forceful, like faster out breath, and the inhalation component is emphasized, then you become more energized, which can be very, very helpful. For example, a long drive at night or falling asleep somewhere at work, maybe. I don't want to say yoga class at this point, but then you become more alert, which, if timed appropriately and done in intervals, is fine. Just if we have an stimulation of that alertness all the time, it starts wearing us out if not balanced throughout our day. When we then look at where we breathe in the body, I like to split up the body in a couple of different ways, which is top and bottom of the torso, as well as front and back. Top to bottom, we basically, if we keep it very easy, we have breathing in the rib cage area or breathing in the abdominal area. The reality, hopefully for all of us, is that we use both areas quite well. Any kind of breathing that focuses on the rib cage area will be more stimulating. We have little nerve receptors in between the ribs that when they get stretched, they're built into the muscle, soft tissue area that lives in between here. When they get stretched through movement of the rib cage, that gives a stimulating impulse to your what's called the sympathetic nervous system, so that part that makes us more alert. Like, don't think I'm doing like this all the time. I like when I'm breathing more into my rib cage, I can move through a class, an interview like this with more energy by directing the breath. We feel that when we do active back bends in yoga practice, like Urdhva Dhanurasana, near the wheel pose, the rib cage expands. Particularly if you do it on your hands rather than a supported one, you will feel rather energized rather than quiet and calm as a result of that. So again, it's that expansion of the rib cage which shows that effect. If we bring our breath more into the abdominal area, so that soft part of your belly, some people call it the stomach, different name for a different interview there. This area here, downward movement of the diaphragm and breathing into the soft part of your abdomen, allowing it to be soft in the first place, will have more relaxing or calming results. We see it in little children. You know what works really well, if you've never done that, you have a little kid that for whatever reason gets really upset, and you go, oh, put your hand on their belly, breathe here, and then take 3-4 breaths, and all fine again. Usually, if they keep being upset, then maybe there's a real reason to look any further. It helps us as well. We might only have to get through all the layers that we piled up as adults when we come to that. When we look at the, okay.
Thank you.
And you'd like to ask a question?
yes, I got a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, you know, and every sentence you say brings up like 3 questions for me. So I'm being essential with my questions, and actually I'm just going to reiterate what you said in a way to make sure that I understood. And one of my favorite mantras is KISS, and you know, old school KISS is keep it simple, stupid. And vibrant school way of saying it is keep it simple, sweetheart. So that you know, when we can take what you do so well is yeah, what you do so well is you take something that's really complex and you make it simple in a way that we can understand it. So if I was to be hyper simple and over simple, would it be fair to say that breathing into the chest is more on the exciting or stimulating side for the nervous system, and we'll feel that, and breathing down into the belly area is more on the calming side? And does that make sense? Is that accurate?
In general, that's completely correct. Think of it that way. What would a person breathe like? Like, where would their breath be directed when someone is very anxious, or even like in the extreme who is having a panic attack? It'll be directed very much high up in the chest and the front. And short, shallow breaths. Like, it's up, nervous system goes up, and then the suggestion is often like breathe into a brown paper bag. Yeah? Color obviously completely non-essential, but by breathing more slowly, rebreathing, there's a few processes taking place, but it allows people to slow down, and slowing down brings relaxation to bring the breath a bit lower into the body. As a result, we're dropping the breath down, and more relaxation, more calming as part of that simple shift will already take place. So yes, you're on the right track there, which doesn't mean we always and only want to breathe into the belly. However, for many people, when we hold tension, the belly is often forgotten. So far, so good? Okay. The next part, I also spoke about the front to back split of the body. So, did you know that your diaphragm, so that sheet of muscle and tendon that separates your lungs from your, say, organs, the rest of the guts. Most of us think our lungs are inside the rib cage. But when we're really looking at it, the top of the diaphragm, which sits in there, often described like a dome, but it's actually more like up on the inside, then comes across, so up, comes across and down, is roughly at the level of the sixth rib. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here, roughly where that screw is, yeah, which you won't find on your own body, but in the skeleton, this is the bottom of the top level of the diaphragm. Your lungs live above there, which means in the front of the body. Everything below here, which from the camera angle at this point looks about half the diaphragm, half the rib cage, is in the front of the body, not your lungs. Yes, your lungs are actually quite high. Trouble is in the front. When we then assume the size of our heart very roughly is the size of our fist, and place that somewhere behind the sternum, the breastbone here, how much space do you have left in your rib cage for your lungs? In the front, really, really little. Using the front, even though this is what we can see, we think, take a big breath, and I was like, this little space here, take a little breath. Yeah, not much is going on when you breathe here. Little space to begin with, partially occupied by your heart. Your lungs predominantly live in the back half of your body. Yeah? More than 60% or more of your lungs are in the back of your body. And it's here in the back where they also extend a lot lower down than they do in the front. So not only are we talking about a top-bottom split where the top will derive more of a, say, stimulating, maybe even towards an anxious type of breath, whereas as we direct our breath more towards the back of the body, some people say breathe into your kidneys, breathe between your shoulder blades, all that direction is then up to whatever style of teaching or favorite words you like to use here. That helps you to actually bring the breath not only further around, but also lower in there, leading to a greater relaxation possibility as a result of it. So further we have an effect on breath volume, and we have an effect on breath quality and the effect on the nervous
system. That's so cool, Chris. That's the most thorough and clear and simple explanation for various qualities to the breath. We talked already about ratio in to out, and location bottom to top, and location front to back. And also great what you said about the more clarity on where the diaphragm actually is, and that relationship. Yeah, and you know what? I've been teaching about breath specifically for 25 years, and I didn't actually realize quite how high it is myself. So that was awesome. Thank you. And really interesting about where the heart is placed relative to where the lungs are too, which probably connects to why that the inhale tends to speed up the heart in a way, right? Because it's getting pressurized. Is that accurate? Inhaling up into the chest, rather.
It actually speeds up either way. The interesting thing is the heart, and that's where anatomical models like these fail our understanding of the body. Because here it looks like our skeleton is separate to everything else in the body. We think of our heart as a separate part of the body. Whereas in reality, so now we have to build this imaginary diaphragm back in here, which extends lower down in the back, just to make that point. But also the heart lives on top of the diaphragm, and what the packaging of the heart, or the protective layer, if you want to call it that, is actually also attached to the diaphragm. So any movement of the diaphragm, any kind of breath that you take, and your diaphragm is your primary breathing muscle, any movement there is your movement of the heart, and that contributes to heart health. Every time you move the diaphragm, your heart moves. One of the main diseases in the Western world, and since you're living in the States, predominantly in the States, is heart disease. If you have little movement, little breath, then your diaphragm doesn't move much and your heart doesn't move much, which means all the blood vessels coming out of the heart and also the blood vessels that then move around to supply the heart, which are called the coronary blood vessels, they don't get exercised. No, blood vessels are made of muscles. If you don't exercise your muscles, they shrivel away. So no breath, no heart health. They're so interlinked. So we need to, just for that part of our health, need to continue to breathe in a healthy way.
That's fantastic. Hey, Chris, can I shift gears for a moment?
Yeah, sure.
Which is to a couple things. One is, as I said, the information you're giving is so valuable and stimulating for me on the level that it's just exciting to be able to have this kind of conversation about breath, which I very seldom get. And so I'm getting excited about the dialogue, and I also want to make well, and that's just where I was going, is I want to make sure that we are providing this for others in a way that is digestible for them, because even though you and I are fanatics about breath and anatomy, for some people this is going to be a lot of information to digest. And
let's make it passionate rather than fanatic, but otherwise, yes.
Yes, okay, I'm with you. So what I'd love to do is, one, see if we can continue our conversation another time and make this part one, and two, ask one more question, and then I'll give a space for you to say like a last thing for now about breath, and also to let people know about how they can get in touch with you more. You know, one of the ways, of course, is you've been a great part of our of my yoga teacher trainings over the years, and hopefully we're going to continue that in May next year. And there are other ways that people can contact you too, of course. Well, do you want to say that part right now? What, how can people find out more about
talking about it? Sure. So this is the Anatomy Show, or the Yoga Anatomy Show. You can find it at anatomyshow.com. Just one word, .com. Easy there. Facebook also, facebook.com. Which way do I do it in the window? On the camera, / Anatomy Show. You can see me there. I'll post little things, little updates, little ideas on the body, and it continues like that. Or like Daniel said, teacher trainings, workshops. So I do travel around the entire world year round and present to interested people, interested schools, either as part of their training for the education component of the teachers, or for anyone who's interested in more public workshops. Continue education in Toronto, in Europe, in Asia, in Australia, Canada, of course. That's clearly available, and also if you want to come and have more detailed, more personal instructions or clarifications, that is also part of my work as a naturopath and yoga teacher there.
Awesome, thank you. And okay, my last question for you for the moment, and this will probably be a part one and part two, because I want to get a sort of a quick answer from you for now, and then I suspect we'll want to expand it later. One of the things I tell people about breathing is, as you said, it can be a way to energize or a way to calm ourselves down. And I also think of breath, and specifically the lymph system, as being the primary way that we detoxify or get rid of what we don't need. And what could you tell our people about how breath works with the lymph system?
Okay, here's the short answer for now. We have about 15 liters, like an average body. For some reason, not that I like to think of myself that way, I'm fairly average. 5'9", 150 pounds, that's kind of the average person. So I assume there's about 15 liters of lymph fluid throughout my body. The largest part of your lymphatic system lives in here. in the abdominal region, around your organs, around the digestive system. Your diaphragm is that part above, so somewhere here, the digestive system, about your largest lymphatic system, that with every breath, if we breathe properly, we start to move this area down against the resistance of the abdominal wall. So when the diaphragm relaxes out, the abdominal wall moves it back in. So your breath is your big, important pump of the lymphatic system through the body. If you breathe in the restricted way, you're restricting your lymphatic flow. That's the short answer.
That's great. Well, and would you that? Thank you. And that was succinct and cool and clear. And would you add just one little bit about? I realized as I asked the question that a lot of people have never even heard of the lymph system. The respiratory system and the circulatory system and the digestive system, they get a lot of attention, but the poor lymph system is under publicized. What's going on with that?
What came to my mind immediately was the two-word answer for the lymph system that I don't think is entirely justified, but a teacher of mine, like maybe 20 years ago, he used that, and I thought, like, yeah, that's kind of okay to use. And he said, it's a garbage disposal system, trash system. So whatever is seeping out of your blood vessels, whatever the cells dump out that we don't need any longer, gets deposited in the spaces between the cells. So there is a fluid between the cells that also collects and has as immune cells living in it, and it collects stuff, and that is then a fluid that only flows one way, is collected from everywhere in the body, flows one way to be recycled in your circulation, and is pumped around and then cleaned as it's flowing through. So it's from the body to the center, picks up whatever needs to be picked up, has filtering stations built in there, and ends up back in your normal blood. And from the blood, it seeps back out. And it continues. It goes back out and seeps back in. All that. Does that make it clear for,
awesome.
Well, we can't ask other people because I don't see it on the screen, but does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's clear. And, what I'll do also is invite people to ask us some questions. So when we get together for part 2, we can, find out more and perhaps address some of those questions.
Excellent, excellent.
All right. So last thing then, just off the top of your head, and there's no way you could be prepared for this, so anything is awesome. What would you say are the three best, or 3 of the best, most important benefits to mastering breathing?
Part 1, notice what you're doing with your breath. Because most people are not really aware of thinking breath is automatic. Part 2, once you're aware of it, find out where it's going. And as we did in the very beginning today, notice that, oh yeah, there are relationships between, for example, how my heart beats and how I breathe, or the relationships between how I've been breathing the last 5 minutes and what my mental state is like. I feel anxious or I feel more relaxed. And once you start building those, third step would be, which is over a longer time span, would then be to use this more consciously. So if you find yourself, oh, I feel a little bit anxious about whatever, having to meet this person, having to deliver this report, or going to this class where I've never been to, whatever it might have been, and then you can, through preparation, through your breath, bring yourself into a state that is more ready to deal with that appropriately, or to deal with that with an open mind, be more relaxed, and with that less injury risk if there was anything you might be worried about going into a challenging yoga class. If it was.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And that was awesome. And part of what I get from that, and what corresponds to my own belief is, one is that it is possible for everybody to master breathing, even if we were not taught about that in traditional schools. And 2, I think of it as the ultimate cross training for life. You know, there are certain things in life where we put energy into it, we learn about it, we practice it, and we get benefits in different aspects of our life. And to me, breathing is the single most important one of all of those.
Mm. Yeah. Because you have when you think of an athlete, they can get a coach. Like we all can walk. That's something we're born with, and we don't have to think about walking unless there is an impediment of whatever kind, but we walk. But it doesn't mean you're an athlete or you can really excel at it. But you can train and become more aware of how you do it and fine-tune your mobilities, fine-tune your gait cycle, the way you land, push off, if it's about running in this case. The same with the breath. It's something we do naturally. You don't need to change anything. You won't die from it. But if you want to do it well, and you know you can excel at that to have further benefits, won't get a medal for it, I guess, but it's something the medal is then like, hey, I haven't been sick for years and years and years, for example. Or I don't feel like constriction anymore, or I always feel in a better mood than what I used to do. That's medal enough to me. And that is something you can train, because not only can you consciously control your breath, but also your breath is moved by muscles, and muscles are trainable. So you have the ability to consciously interfere, and you have the ability to train, which means mastery for your specific person is possible. You can excel within the limits that we have.
Right.
Very personal practice, but certainly advancement is there and very realistic.
Fantastic. Totally with you. And you know what? And hey, Chris, it's been so fun and enlightening and valuable. Let's leave it there, as tempting as it is for me to ask more. And I'll see about getting some questions, let people know what we're doing. And thank you for being up for doing a part 2.
Yeah, anytime. Like I like doing this, and I know from your background, there's good questions coming in, which allow me then to, okay, let's condense this down, that it's a good little bite-sized chunk to learn from.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, let's pause it there. Children of God, yogis and yoginis, thank you for tuning in to myself, Daniel Aaron, and with special guest Chris Coomer, anatomyshow.com if you want to know more about Chris. And I'll look forward to another time soon. Thank you again so much, Chris.
Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.